American Public Media.
The Florida Forum Speaker Series presents an evening with world-renowned pioneer in integrative medicine, Deepak Chopra, moderated by businessman and owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Shad Khan. Wednesday, January 15th, 7 p.m. Tickets at thefloridaforum.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and on today's First Coast Connect, it's the biggest stories of the week. The city announces plans to replace the Prime Osborne Convention Center with a new University of Florida campus. Penalties could be coming for a relentless odor problem in West Jacksonville. The criminal case against the original prosecutor in the Ahmaud Arbery murder finally moves forward. And a new bill seeks to ban golf courses and large hotels in state parks. We'll talk about all that and more with our all-star panel of journalists on our Friday Week in Review. Then a local theater group promises to deliver some joy to historic Five Points. You can join the conversation on air by calling 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or reach out on social media. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Russia has launched nearly 300 missiles and drones across Ukraine, targeting its power plants and energy grid as winter sets in. NPR's Joanna Kakissis reports from Kyiv. Russian attacks have destroyed more than half the country's energy infrastructure.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky called it one of the largest strikes on the country's energy grid since the beginning of the full-scale war in February 2022. He said Russia attacked with nearly 200 drones and at least 93 missiles, some supplied by North Korea. Ukraine's military said F-16 fighter jets helped shoot down the missiles. Ukraine's energy sector is warning that there will be more rolling power cuts to ration electricity. The Ukrainian foreign minister said he wants allies to deliver at least 20 additional air defense systems to protect the energy grid. Joanna Kakissis, NPR News, Kyiv.
President Biden will hold a virtual meeting today with leaders of a group of 7 nations. They're expected to discuss the fluid situation in Syria. Rebel leaders say they intend to create a transitional government for Syria. Some U.S. colleges are quietly preparing for President-elect Trump's second term. A handful of schools are advising international students who are planning to leave the U.S. for the holidays to get back to campus by the middle of January. From member station GBH in Boston, Kirk Carapezza has more.
Most colleges aren't saying much, but since the election, some have reached out to international students, urging them to return to campus before January 20th to avoid being disrupted or delayed by any new immigration restrictions. Harvard contacted its international students this week, suggesting those traveling overseas for the holidays budget time ahead of Martin Luther King Day, which coincidentally is also Inauguration Day. In his first term, Trump issued a travel ban targeting several majority Muslim countries and heightened visa scrutiny. There are no new proposals yet, but on the campaign trail, Trump promised even stricter policies. For NPR News, I'm Kirk Carapezza in Boston.
Lawmakers from New Jersey are demanding answers from the federal government after reports of numerous drones sailing overhead. The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security have released a joint statement saying officials have no evidence the drones pose a threat. White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby reiterated that message.
We have no evidence at this time that the reported drone sightings pose a national security or a public safety threat.
The FBI and the DHS say it appears many of the drones are operating lawfully and are guided. But the agency officials say they are working presently with the New Jersey State Police to further investigate the drone sightings. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's 9:04. The 100th anniversary of Jacksonville's third oldest public park will be celebrated tomorrow afternoon around the bronze statue of a winged figure that honors thousands of Floridians who died in World War I. Memorial Park sits on nearly 6 acres between the St. Johns River and Riverside Avenue. Its centennial observance starts at 3, and at 4 o'clock, organizers have scheduled a photo shoot to recreate the one taken at the park's dedication in 1924. Patrick Emmett is the president of the Memorial Park Association Board of Directors.
Not only was it opening a memorial to the fallen soldiers of the state of Florida, but a lot of the mothers and fathers of those fallen soldiers were at that picture. And so I think it's important that we all need to remember that all of them were there when this thing opened, and it was so important to them.
In addition to recreating the iconic 1924 photograph, there will also be live music and food trucks, as well as presentations by city and state officials. The Jacksonville Humane Society and the city's Animal Care and Protective Services are holding their annual Silent Night fostering event over the next week with the goal of getting temporary homes for animals before Christmas Eve. The Silent Night event starts tomorrow at the Animal Care and Protective Services shelter on Forest Street, and it begins this upcoming Wednesday at the Humane Society on Beach Boulevard. Dogs and cats will be available to foster and can be adopted by foster families. Highs in the mid-60s today in Jacksonville.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Sony Pictures Classics, presenting Becoming Led Zeppelin, a documentary that explores the origins of this iconic group, exclusively in IMAX February 7th. Tickets at becomingledzeppelinfilm.com.
Joined by Claire Goforth, attorney and investigative reporter at the Daily Dot. Hey, Claire.
Good morning.
Glad to have you here. Renata DiGregorio, reporter at First Coast News. Good morning, Renata.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Dan Scanlon, reporter at WJCT News 89.9. Hi, Dan.
Good morning.
And Ann Maxwell made it in just under the wire, investigative reporter at our news partner, News for Jax. Hi, Ann.
Hi, Ann.
That's San Marco train.
Every time.
It's the bane of our existence. I want to start, Dan, with a story that you've been covering. This was an announcement that was made yesterday that the Prime Osborne Convention Center is now the future site of a $300 million, 22-acre graduate campus for the University of Florida.
Yes, we all attended, Ann and I attended the mayor's scrum yesterday to talk about this. She's genuinely excited, and this really does sound like it could be a major league boost for the La Villa area. You're going to put in what is now an empty parking lot behind the convention center. Some of these buildings, as they get built over the next 10 years or so, the land actually between that parking lot and the railroad is going to be used, some land across the street. It all is going to be part of a transportation hub eventually where you might actually return Amtrak service to the actual train, classic 1919 train station there, which would then put you right next to the JTA transportation hub, which is a logical idea. The old train station itself would be supposedly developed into retail and some office space and probably think like an airport terminal with lots of places to hang out as you're going to and from classes or whatever. And the mayor also likened it to, here we have all the development on our end here, the WJCT end, with the Four Seasons, the office building, and the parks that are going on at this end of Bay Street. And now the other end of Bay Street is getting basically all of this development, along with the Emerald Trail and its closeness to I-95. She was genuinely excited. 18-minute long news conference, no lack of conversation among journalists and her about this thing. And again, I was at the 2023 February announcement of this with then Mayor Curry and
of the UF campus.
Of the UF campus, and now we've got the $50 million from the city council. Mayor doesn't seem to think there'll be much problem getting the next $50 million out of the city, and the Semiconductor Institute, the eighth of that does all this research that the U.S. supposedly needs for all the semiconductor work, is a possibility. Although there's some federal funding that you and I were discussing yesterday, there's a question there, but. It's a major win, and I'm not cheerleading here. It's a major win for that part of town. It's going to get the boost that the historians and the residents and all the others need.
Yeah, and that semiconductor facility was news to me, and maybe that's already been out there before yesterday, but that is a really interesting development. I mean, there is so much emphasis now on improving tech production chips that are essential in so much electronic work these days, making that, more of a U.S. product. And this would be part of that effort.
Right, and it was news to me too. And the mayor was saying yesterday that this is going to be $100 million economic impact just from that semiconductor institute, which my understanding is that's going to be kind of a separate thing from the rest of the campus, or is it going to be
I don't know, but
full on?
obviously when you have graduate students who are learning fintech and all the rest of it, there's going to have to be some crossbreeding there.
Right, right, and so the mayor's really excited about that. And they also, UF talked about how this could be used for the defense industry yesterday. Jacksonville is a military town. That was the first I had heard about the defense industry intersecting with this campus.
Interesting.
Right. And, you think about President-elect Trump has promised tariffs on China. My understanding is they're a big semiconductor producer. So seems like the timing's really right for Jacksonville to capitalize on that potentially.
That military part we don't realize, but our Navy bases here have private contractors working in them, like Sikorsky, et cetera, where their people are working with the Navy on the aircraft and the helicopters and the stuff. So it would be a good marriage in La Villa, and then would connect with Mayport, connect with St. Mary's at the sub base, et cetera.
Yeah. Claire, this could be, really transformational for La Villa if it's built out as planned. But it is no small cost. I mean, as Dan mentioned, there's, the city's already committed $50 million. It's going to need to pony up another $50 million. The state has provided, I think, like $250 million, and it's done some fundraising from Shad Khan and CSX. So, I mean, there's a lot of players involved in trying to bring this to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of the overarching goal of revitalizing downtown itself, right? I mean, for how many years? I've lived in Jacksonville almost 20 years, and we've been talking about revitalizing downtown the entire time, having what Dan told me before the show is going to be 10 to 20,000 graduate students who are going to be going to school every single day in that area. That's going to be a huge economic boost. And I understand that, $100 million is a lot of money for the city to pony up. But when it comes to economic development, that's just what happens. That's the way it works. Love it or hate it, it's just reality. And the fact of having that many people going downtown and spending money at the restaurants, spending money at what retail there is, I think that is going to outweigh any concerns that people have that this may not be a good investment for the city, because any city that wants to grow like Jacksonville does and to be a really, an international city, you have to have a strong downtown, and which is something that we have lacked as long as I've lived here and far beyond that.
Yeah, and having, the University of Florida, I mean, obviously they have a presence already with their medical school at UF Health, Shands, as we used to call it. So they have a presence, but having this additional facility, I think, really does boost the city's reputation and its position as a place that young people might have a destination, to go and to work even after they get their education.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows UF. And especially with young people, it's going to be graduate students. So it's not going to be, like the young 18-year-old college students. These are going to be people who are like more set up. They're ready to kind of stay in one place maybe. And if Jacksonville could be that place where people come and then they decide to stay and have families, I think the mayor mentioned that yesterday too, that this could be a place where if people get jobs here, then we're going to have the brain gain. And I always hear the brain drain because I'm from West Virginia and we deal with that a lot. So the brain gain, this was a new word. It was kind of exciting to hear. That could be really neat for Jacksonville.
I didn't know we had that West Virginia
I know, two West
connection
Virginians
here.
on the same panel. And also, I came here for law school at the now closed Florida Coastal School of Law, and it's the same kind of concept where you come here, you're a little bit older, you're ready to sort of settle down, and 20 years later, here I am still.
Here you are. Dan, you and I are both old enough to remember when the Prime Osborne was itself the new development that was going to transform
1983,
this area of downtown. And it's probably worth at least mentioning. I mean, that was a largely failed concept. I mean, that was going to have a hotel. It was going to draw in people to conventions from all around. It mostly has been underutilized. It has been plagued by structural problems.
It leaks.
Yeah. It has not spurred any development in that area whatsoever. And so it is a step forward, but I think also recognizing that, there are projects that the city has undertaken in the past that have just not worked out.
The mayor was specific in saying that the 1919 train station would stay, but that probably the other stuff, which is the convention halls, would go. And that seems logical. You have a core of a classic arched window 1919 building. That's going to be a centerpiece for the front of this.
It's a beautiful building, right?
But I can tell you're right. That parking lot extends to infinity, and I've never seen it, except maybe once or twice, ever go past where the old steam train used to be, the back half toward I-95. And let's not forget, if the automated vehicles, the JTAs, Bay Street Innovation Corridor, gets going, you will have a link to get on an autonomous vehicle and zip your way to the Elbow, zip your way to the stadium and back. And suddenly there'll be people who will need to get from one side of downtown to the other.
Is part of this plan relocating a convention center, or are we just
Yeah,
kind of giving up the
the mayor
concept?
stated that there's something in the city plan. It's actually elsewhere. I found documents where the current jail is. It would be the new location of that. But again, you're still talking how many millions of dollars to get rid of and relocate the law enforcement and
I think
put
that that's
something there.
a 1B, as I've heard.
Yeah,
That's
that's
$1 billion
That's going to take
project to
that's
move the
going to take a
jail.
while to get there, but that's logical. And again, just one more thing along Bay Street that makes the revival quite exciting. That you literally have from La Villa to the stadium stuff to do.
If you're just joining us, we are talking to our panel of all-star journalists this morning about the topics of the week. You can join our conversation on air by calling 904-549-2937. You can also email First Coast Connect at WJCT.org or reach out on social media. We have a call from our friend Stanley on the north side. Good morning, Stanley. Go ahead.
Good morning to everybody. First of all, when it comes to downtown development, you have most of the people are over 60 years old making the decision for the future. Give me a break. When it comes to developing the North Bank of Jacksonville, for 55 years, none of those problems, the unmet promises, has not been delivered. Numerous administrations here have not changed anything when it comes to that community, North Urban Core. But you keep wanting to spend money, taxpayer money, and nothing changed. Thank you.
You know, he's right. During the Godbold administration, there was a huge project that was going to go in the shipyards where we've got the Orlick right now. And it failed. One of the reasons it failed is because JTA would not extend the Skyway Express to the stadium. And they wanted that subway system, so to speak, to get people back and forth. So, yeah. And
Well, I mean, that project also consumed like $36 million of city money under, I think it was the Delaney administration, and nothing was ever built. So, I mean, we do have a little bit of a reputation for sunk costs in this city that yield very little. But I want to move on to another topic that is of great importance to people who live, particularly in Murray Hill and on the west side of Jacksonville. Renata, this is a story that you have covered like a dog with a bone. It is a really important story. So first of all, just remind us what these neighbors in Murray Hill and on the west side of Jacksonville say is happening.
Okay, so sometimes if you're in Murray Hill, you'll smell a kind of gross smell. I've smelled it before, so I feel like I can say that. But just speaking with people, they describe it as chemical-like. People say it's vile. It keeps them inside their houses because they go outside, and people have reported getting headaches and feeling sick from it and stuff like that. So it's become a really big nuisance. And I started reporting on this back in 2020. I was trying to look at when. I was like, oh, that was about like 5 years ago. But so it's been going on. And the crazy thing now is back talking with people before. I mean, I was wearing a mask. We were doing the 6 feet apart interviews, and they were describing this exact same thing. And now here we are. All of these things have happened since then, but we're basically in the exact same place. Where I was doing a couple interviews with people last week and this week where they're like, yeah, there's this terrible chemical odor. I have to stay inside. I walk outside and it feels
Same.
terrible. Yeah, they'll take their dog on a walk and everyone's talking about it. It's the exact same story.
So remind us, I mean, you say that nothing has changed. There have been attempts to address
Yeah.
this in a variety of ways in court and at the city level and at the regulatory level. So catch us up to speed on what has been attempted.
Yeah, so a lot has been done, but I mean, we're kind of at the same place as where we were 5 years ago. But one of the big things is the city spent $125,000 to do an odor study. It lasted a whole year. They put all these sensors around town to kind of track the odor. At the end of it, it didn't point to any one place. I spoke with the people in charge, and they were saying there was no like smoking gun. Basically, I asked a lot of different ways, like, is it this place? Is it this place? How do you know? And the consensus was it pointed to a lot of different places, a little bit. So it wasn't really conclusive in that way that people really wanted it to be. There's also been some cease and desist orders, some fines against this one company that most people have been pointing the finger at. But so far, that company has been denying any wrongdoing, and there's not really anything conclusive pointing to them. There's a lawsuit that they're dealing with too, but still nothing really changed.
And we should say this is on Lane Avenue, this suspected source, a lot of
Mhm.
people believe is the source. It is a fragrance factory. They have denied that they are the source of the odor. And they say that they've been working with regulators to determine the actual source. And so that has been a point of contention. I mean, they were the company that was named in a federal lawsuit that was ultimately dismissed as an improper venue for this lawsuit. But, um, that is the place that a lot of people think the order was sourced to. And I think what I found really interesting was that this study that you reported on, initially it appeared that they were going to try to find the source of the odor. And when it ultimately was concluded, I think they told you they were actually just going to be able to determine sort of wind direction.
Right. Yeah, that was a big thing. Is everyone understood it as, yeah, we're going to find out where this odor is coming from. And then at the very end it felt kind of like they're saying, "Oh, no, that wasn't." Everyone kind of misunderstood the purpose.
We're going to spend
looking-
$125,000 to figure out what direction
Which
the
way
wind
the
is
wind
blowing.
blows?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just licked my finger and held it up in the air. I'm like, $125,000.
Stroke a check for Ann.
Just send us a bill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You'll only charge half that much, Anne.
Yeah.
The thing is, too, people are really into this. So there's other people who, for the past 5 years, have been tracking wind direction to see which way it blows. And a lot of the arguments are, well, I smell it at my house, then I go stand right in front of IFF and it smells the same. So that's what a lot of people are saying. But then, of course, IFF is saying that doesn't really prove anything.
I spoke with a local resident of Murray Hill yesterday to prepare for the show, and they told me that Jimmy Peluso, the councilman who represents that district, is holding a community meeting to discuss the matter, and that they're encouraging the public to embark on a letter writing campaign to the Florida Department of Environmental Protection because IFF is up for a permit renewal. So they're trying to go about it through the regulatory process in order to get their permit yanked so that they can no longer operate in the neighborhood.
And to add some additional provisions that would prevent any emissions.
Yes.
And then penalties if
And
those-
according to them, they also have months of validated claims against IFF. Now, I haven't verified that, but that is what I was told.
IFF stands for International Flavors and Fragrances, Dan. And a lot of people are surprised when they learned that this suspected source of some bad smells is actually a fragrance factory. They manufacture scents by stripping sulfurs out of a certain chemical that makes it a really good place to attach good smelling stuff. But that sulfur emission, that sulfur that they're pulling out can create kind of a bad
Yeah.
odor.
And people who have lived here a while may remember a similar issue at SCM Glidco along I-95 on the north side back in the Godbold administration. Tommy Hazouri actually campaigning for mayor and getting told by the management that he was on their property. I've actually been inside that place. They were using pine oil, pineal.
It's like a turpentine.
Turpentine.
Kind of.
So the smell could alternatively be Chanel No. 5, which was one of their customers, or peppermint toothpaste to this intense pine smell.
And this is kind of the Norwood exit. Is that right? When you're on I-95
yeah.
that you're passing. Now that's still there. So what has happened to that? I mean,
Well,
they're still manufacturing.
I don't smell anything, and obviously it's been 20, 30 years since the smell of money that Channel 4 did the great documentary on back then. I'm sure there's better technical odor eaters that are being put in place that the stuff doesn't get out of a building. And I'll tell you, even at SCM Glidco when I was inside, I didn't smell much. The actual scentologist, this highly paid French guy, would actually let me smell some of the stuff they did, and it was glorious what you could get out of pine oil.
I want to take a call from Eric in Arlington. Good morning, Eric. Go ahead.
Hey, where is this plant on Lane Avenue that you guys are? Does anyone know? Like is it Lane and Highway or Lane and Normandy, or where is it exactly?
I'm gonna just quick Google it. I mean, I've been to it before, but I don't have a direct reference point. So let me see. It looks like
It's back there a little bit, kind of by West 12th Street.
yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out on a map right now, but I'm on the wrong one. I
West
do.
5th Street.
Yeah. What's what?
It looks like it's in between West 5th Street and West 12th Street.
Is there like a main cross there though? Like a
Not really. It's kind of a very industrial area over there.
Which would be north of I-10 then,
Mhm.
obviously, yeah.
Yeah, north of Commonwealth.
okay. So that's the location, Eric. Is it something that you've experienced personally?
Yeah, well, the reason I say that is because there's a Collamer plant that right in my neighborhood that's just almost adjacent to Murray Hill. It's right on the other side of I-10. And on Fridays, for some reason, in the past, I've smelled the exhaust on Friday afternoon. They're exhausting something, and it smells like hairspray. And also, there's a railroad spur that connects that Collamer plant over to the Beaver Street railroad line. And so I just wonder if stuff's being transported. So they bring in stuff in these big train cars and move them around back there. And I'm just wondering if they were moving them back and forth between the Collamer plant and this other place that you guys are describing. But
Yeah,
I don't know if that helps at all.
it's a good question, Eric. I mean, obviously, and there is a big industrial footprint in Jacksonville in various neighborhoods. And I think that's part of the reason that it is so hard to really determine for these, regulators and the city officials the source of this.
Right. I mean, that could be a good defense potentially for this company that's being accused of emitting the smells. I mean, it's hard to quantify. It's in the air. As Renata said, it's hard to pinpoint the exact focus. So, I mean, I would imagine they might try to fight, if the state environmental agency tries to revoke
FDEP.
their permit. So, I mean, that could.
But do they want to go through the discovery process? Because then all of their internal data, to the extent that they admit it exists, given what we know about corporations, they must know. If it is them, they know it. I mean, I just don't really have any doubt that they would have that information.
I mean, we should say they have been very strenuous in their denial, Renata, and unflinching in saying that they have very advanced, best practices when it comes to emission controls and scrubbers and things that, prevent any kind of fugitive emissions from escaping. That doesn't help residents. And so, as you say, they're in this posture. What do we know about this meeting? Where is it? When is it? How could people get involved?
So far, and I just checked with one of my people about like 10 minutes ago, and they said TBD on when it'll be. But yeah, they are planning to have an FDEP meeting, hopefully. And that is one of the things also that kind of makes it more complicated is there's a lot of industrial facilities right in this one area. So even the person who called was like, oh, maybe it was this, taking it during this time. There's just so much going on over there. I remember a couple of years ago I interviewed, it was a UF health professor. It was really hard to find somebody who would be able to talk about this. And even he was like, I don't know how you guys are going to track a smell. And so it's just very hard to prove. But yeah, hopefully people will be able to get some kind of answer from this meeting and they'll be able to at least get their issues to the forefront again.
Yeah, Dan, I mean, this city is actually sort of uniquely prepared to address odors because of its history with so many bad smell complaints back when there was 2 paper mills downtown, and problems with what was being put in sewage effluent that was chemical in its nature from factories that was being basically dumped into the St. Johns River without treatment. So there was actually an odor enforcement, panel created so that there was going to be somebody that could respond. But that's a matter of staffing. That's a matter of enforcement. And it is hard, as Renata says, if you get a call about a bad smell, I mean, somebody has to really basically be there immediately if they want to verify.
But I would guess technology these days if there's an odor, there is a chemical or something that is putting it there that's making your nose react to it. So you'd think there's got to be some equipment that can at least identify what that is. But you're right. It's very transient. In fact, the only smell these days that I ever smell anymore is coffee at Maxwell House. Yeah. If you're downwind when they're roasting, that's the only odor I smell.
But Dan, how can you be sure that it's Maxwell House when we haven't tracked it?
Because I'm standing right there and it smells like coffee.
Oh, wow.
I sense your point. If you're just joining us, I'm talking to Dan Scanlon, Ann Maxwell, Claire Goforth, and Renata DiGregorio about the biggest stories of the week. And you can join our conversation. Call 904-549-2937 or email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org if you would like to see the faces of these beautiful panelists. You can also watch us on YouTube or our Facebook live stream. I want to move on now, Ann, to a story that you have been covering. It is a case that has been languishing essentially since 2020. That's the year that Ahmaud Arbery was murdered in Satilla Shores in Glenn County, Georgia. And this case involves the former district attorney from Brunswick, her name's Jackie Johnson. She's charged in relation to her role in that case initially. Catch us up on who she is.
Right. So this case is really about an alleged cover up. If you recall, Ahmaud Arbery was jogging in a neighborhood. He started being followed by some people in that neighborhood who supposedly suspected him of stealing, and they shot and killed him. Now all serving life sentences. So Jackie Johnson was the DA in that area for 10 years, and one of the suspects, Greg McMichael, used to work for her, and he leaves her voicemail the day of the murder.
He was like an investigator for the district
Yes,
attorney's
he was
office.
he had retired as an investigator, so he had worked for her. So basically, so charges weren't filed initially until the video of the shooting was leaked and the GBI took over, and charges obviously filed and convictions made. Huge story. But so Jackie Johnson, basically, this case is, she's being accused of covering it up, speaking with Greg McMichael back and forth in the weeks afterward, reaching out to a neighboring DA to advise police on the case. And she's accused of trying to protect, her former employee and his son, who was also involved. So this has been taking so long because the AP is reporting Jackie Johnson's, and she's no longer the DA there. I will say she was voted out after the shooting happened, and I believe before she was indicted in September of 2021. But the case has been taking so long because, as we mentioned already, the murderers have already been convicted, brought to trial, in prison now, because her defense attorney has been tied up in this sprawling case in Atlanta. And so that was recently resolved, is my understanding, and that's why this is now picking up. And so her case goes to trial in January, and she's charged with a felony, I believe, is violating oath of office, and the misdemeanor is interfering with the police investigation.
And Claire, this other case that this defense attorney was involved in was this massive rap involved case in outside Atlanta.
Young Thug, I believe, is
Young
the
Thug,
rapper's
yep.
name. It was a racketeering case, and he recently pled guilty, is my understanding. Jackie Johnson is arguing now that the Attorney General's office cannot prosecute her fairly because of their involvement in the original prosecution and in the case as it was investigated, which the prosecuting attorney, the Attorney General's office, is saying that is just a delay tactic to sort of put her case into a legal limbo for, in perpetuity. But then her attorney counters that, the governor could appoint a special prosecutor for the case. But given that it's drug out for 3 years, and, she's still, that's a long time for somebody to just be walking free who is who is facing a felony, which has a penalty of 1 to 5 years, I believe. I looked it up this morning. And to, at the last minute, this is like, try to delay further. I mean, there's really no argument that it's a delay tactic.
I mean, I feel like I'm somewhat mystified by Georgia court proceedings. Anyway, they are not quite as transparent as they are here in Florida. It is sometimes really hard to get information on a case.
Well, I'll mention our photographer at News4Jax and a photographer at Action News tried to go up and bring our recording equipment into the courtroom for this hearing with Jackie Johnson the other day, and they wouldn't let us in because it turned out the judge hadn't signed the order that was needed to allow that in. And I reached out for comment on why they wouldn't allow that, and I never heard back.
That's one of those things, like you have to file this Rule 22 in order to get permission to bring recording devices in, but often you have to do that days beforehand. The judge has to sign it. Yeah. It's a paperwork process, and if you're not
to
right
give perspective is to stream it so people can watch it live. So I mean, so there's a level of transparency that wasn't there, at least for our audiences here in Jacksonville.
Right, but it does seem, just an extraordinarily long time. This was actually her first court appearance. This is a case that stems from 2020. It just seems astonishing that this is just beginning to get rolling. And I guess it's the last hearing before the trial begins.
That's my understanding. The judge didn't make any decisions on the motions on that both sides presented the other day. I think he said he was going to look to do that on Monday, whether the AG's office should be disqualified, things like that. But as of right now, jury selection is set to begin January 21st. And both sides said they think the trial lasts maybe 2.5 weeks. It could be drawn out longer just because of, the notoriety of the case is what the judge said.
And Renata, you spent weeks, if not months, in Brunswick when the original criminal trial was going on, and then subsequently for the federal hate crimes trial, which they were also convicted in. But this original charge against Jackie Johnson was essentially that she was using her influence to make sure that Greg McMichael's son, Travis, wasn't arrested. Is that kind of the original allegation of how she was intervening, allegedly?
I believe that's what was said at the time. And it was interesting because the three men who killed Ahmaud Arbery were kind of the main focus, of course, of the trial. But the family kept bringing up, don't forget Jackie Johnson. They were saying, we're not going to forget about her, so we don't want the public to forget about her either. Now it's been so long. That was the first thing that I thought of when Jackie Johnson keeps coming up. It's kind of, oh, yeah, why is it? It's been so many years now. So I also just kind of think of the family that's still sort of going through this.
Yeah, and probably will be attending these. Were they present when you were up there, Anne?
I
Because they were
wasn't.
very persistent about being present at all of the other proceedings related to the Arbery case.
I'm not sure. I wasn't physically up there in Georgia. Our photographer was, so I'm not 100%. But I would imagine they would have.
I mean, it also bears mention that the McMichaels and their neighbor who was driving the truck, no, he was recording, they argued that it was self-defense, which apparently her office accepted that. And then we've all seen the video. That is not self-defense. They chased that man down and shot him in the street. I mean, I've seen the video. I would hope to never see it again. So the fact that that video existed and was ultimately leaked, I mean, they bought an argument, arguably, that really does not hold water.
Dan, this prosecutor had been a lightning rod for a number of reasons. I mean, this was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. And as Anne said, she was voted out of office after that murder, even though she was no longer involved in this case. But she was a name that, for a variety of reasons in a variety of cases, had been accused of mishandling. And so for a lot of people, this is the culmination of many, many years of complaints and concerns about Jackie Johnson.
Well, as we're going to be discussing another case that she had some involvement in and caused a delay and actually caused the person who was not the murderer to be stuck in jail for quite a while until.
Well, let's talk about that case. I mean, that is another headline from this week out of Georgia. Basically, a new suspect has been charged in the 1985 Camden County murder of Harold and Thelma Swain.
I will say on Jackie Johnson really quick, I want to point out that she has pleaded not guilty on all this and has denied wrongdoing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should say, too, I mean, they've said that
Ahmaud Arbery.
Yeah, that she had no idea what was going on at the Arbery case, and that she was not, offering any counsel about trying to interfere with the case. I mean, she's been very adamant about that. So that's
right. I just wanted to point that out.
In spite of having 16 phone calls with McMichaels, the father, who is now serving time for murder.
Right. At any rate, she was also involved in this 1985 case. Now, that predates her, but there was a man who was convicted in this murder and served 20 years in prison before his conviction was overturned with the help of the Georgia Innocence Project. His name was Dennis Perry, and he was released for this murder, and now another person has been charged. It's a complicated story, Claire, and you're our go-to attorney, so help us find some... tell us what's the deal with this case? Where is it now? How can they prosecute somebody if they built a case against somebody else who served 20 years? Doesn't that compromise their case?
This case is extremely complicated, and I literally have 3 pages of notes in front of me because of how complicated it is. In 1985, the Swains were murdered in their church in front of 8 witnesses. They brought in some men for questioning, Eric Spar, who is now charged with their murders. They decided at the time that his alibi held up. And then years later, in the year 2000, Dennis Perry was arrested for the murder, and in 2003, he was convicted. Although he had an alibi, they had found glasses at the scene that they believed belonged to the killer. He did not wear glasses, and the DNA evidence did not match. There was hairs on those glasses that did not match him. Some of this the prosecutors did not bring up at trial, and basically the argument is that they suppressed the evidence. In 2019, they had the DNA exonerated, linked in 2019. Sorry, it's so complicated. The DNA testing linked that evidence to Eric Spar,
the man who's currently
charged. The match is like a 99.6% match, which is 1 in 250 people. In 2020, based on that evidence and some excellent reporting by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, just excellent reporting. I was reading that story this morning. they filed a motion for a new trial for Perry, the man who was serving time for the murders. And then his conviction was overturned. And it bears mention that Jackie Johnson was the prosecutor who, as Dan said, she did everything she could to try to keep there from being a new trial, to keep him from being released from prison.
This was after the DNA linked
to Eric Spar, who
to a
is now
different person.
charged, who says he's innocent.
There's an evidence photo from the period that shows a pair of broken glasses on the ground at that church where the deacon and his wife were killed. So it's right there to show you the glasses where the hair was found. And then apparently at some point after Perry was released from prison,
the original. We should be clear. He's the original.
The original suspect. They went to Spar's mother's house. She was just deceased, and GBI did a full forensic examination, which I guess they did find some more DNA evidence that linked mom to son. And now he's in. I guess he was blonde at the time because it was a blonde-haired man who came in. Again, Spar with glasses. Poor Dennis Perry, no glasses, but that was an obvious fact that was bypassed during that prosecution. I covered Johnson's release, and the family was ecstatic, but it took the Innocence Project to get him out, and lots of hard fighting. And now we're going to find some more of the slow Georgia jury system and trial system as he comes up with all sorts of excuses, I'm sure, that he wasn't there. But it's amazing. That church is still there, still the same sign out front, still that same little rural church, a little west of I-95.
Yeah.
It's a real quiet part, northern part of that county.
And Renata, I know that Heather Crawford at your station has done really extensive reporting on the original exoneration. It does seem like a really long time for a family to wait for justice and to be kind of put through this fake out, I guess, in terms of having believed that the case was resolved and that the person who perpetrated it was, justly convicted. It's a lot. I don't even know how many of their living relatives would be around.
That's a generation. And they probably, the thing is, I reported on something.
And
like
they were
this
pretty,
that's
they were in their
similar.
60s when they were murdered. So,
Yeah, and so these people, if you think about it, they lived their whole lives thinking this one thing, that it turned out this way, and now to figure out that that's all just turned around is nuts. I spoke with someone, it was a different issue, also in Georgia, but they had lived their whole lives thinking that their grandparents had been brutally murdered, and then found out it may have just been an accident. And so I was just speaking with her about just what that does to your mind, and she said that they were just like living in fear, and then to find out the last 40 years was completely different. It was just totally crazy.
yeah, everything that they thought was the case was not the case. I'm going to take a call from Mark on the west side. Good morning, Mark. Go ahead.
You guys aren't talking about this, but I just happened to notice yesterday in the Jacksonville Daily Record that they were talking about the construction of the converting of the Skyway Express to God knows what. Well, they said apparently on December 11th, the JTA board approved a contract that will determine whether the approach to making the elevated track go into surface streets with those autonomous vehicles, whether that would be preferable or whether that portion of the project should be built at all. I'm confused. I thought that had been done and decided a couple of years ago. I mean, they had these dog and pony shows where they had the autonomous vehicles and you could go inside and sit down on them and, all these things. And now I'm finding out that that's still up in the air. I'm kind of confused what's going on over there.
Yeah, so this is the Ultimate Urban Circulator Project, also known as the U2C, and it's run by the JTA. It's supposed to convert the Skyway into this elevated track for an autonomous shuttle, Dan, and it would connect to surface streets. But what he's referring to is a decision just this week that the board is now going to look, actually, I guess put out to bid a contract to determine whether that's actually a good idea or not.
Well, these people pods that you're seeing are not what is going to initially be used. They're going to be converted Ford electric vans. And so obviously you need a ramp that's going to be able to be accessible by a van. It's got to be somewhat shallow as a ramp. It's going to take a lot of space. And I'll credit David Barline from the Times-Union, who passed this on to me yesterday as we were waiting for the mayor, that apparently they have to do a lot more work than just take the center concrete rail out of the Skyway Express. These vans are wide. They're going to have to do more work to make the elevated Skyway
You mean they might not fit?
adaptable to using these
the
autonomous
whole
vehicles.
concept for this was that it was going to be this kind of easy transition. We have this elevated system. We're going to get these automated vehicles that can operate on the system because the monorail itself is outdated. But I mean, to Mark, our caller's point, they're talking now about spending almost $7 million to determine whether or not the ramp system is actually feasible. That seems like an astonishing point to be at right now, to be trying to decide if that.
Do you remember how much landscape that now removed ramp from the Main Street Bridge took up, and the angle that it necessarily took? You need to have a shallow ramp with a lot of ground space to access.
You mean like a gradual ramp?
A gradual ramp to access what is a second or third floor high, Skyway Express, and those have to be designed to handle two kinds of vehicles. Presumably first these Ford vans, and then the smaller electric people pods that we see, these people movers. So I can understand that there's going to be some serious engineering here to be done.
There has been a lot of question, Claire, about whether investing in the Skyway further for this U2C is smart. And it was an issue in the last mayoral campaign. I believe that the candidate, Leanna Cumber, was basically saying this is a giant waste of money. I mean, the city voted to increase our taxes, basically to in part fund this. I believe it was the gas tax, wasn't it? That Mayor
Yes,
Curry
yes.
Mayor Curry pushed through, and a big chunk of that money is going to converting the Skyway to this new system. But it doesn't sound like it's even fully conceived.
It doesn't. I mean, the Skyway is one of those things, like a bad penny. It keeps turning up. I've ridden on it many times. I worked downtown for years. I would use it. I mean,
You're the
me
only
and
one I know.
the unhoused population really enjoy the free ride across the river, and it's very beautiful. But it barely goes anywhere. I mean, what is it? How long is that track?
I think it's like 2 miles.
2 miles. I mean, how big is Jacksonville? 840 square miles or something like that. I spoke with someone years ago. I believe I was editor of Folio Weekly at the time, who actually had a plan where you could extend the Skyway, and it was really economical. It was about 10,000, if I'm recalling correctly. It was like $10,000 per 100 feet or something like that. And because the Skyway
Sounds cheaper than a road.
a lot cheaper, and maybe that was, that might be an underestimation, but I'm sorry, $7 million just to find out if it's feasible. I mean, how many people are riding it a year?
We just have a couple minutes left, but I do want to touch on this pickleball issue in the state parks. There's a bill that's being introduced to the legislature that is going to potentially ban golf courses, large lodges, and pickleball courts, among other things. This was a huge dust-up, Renata, over the last few months when it became clear that the state was looking at converting some state parks to things like golf courses.
Yeah, there was a huge uproar over that. And I mean, it makes sense because Florida is known for its nature and everything. So people were really up in arms about it. So yeah, it should be interesting, I guess, to see what happens next. People really love pickleball. It was the first thing when I saw pickleball on there. But yeah, I think when it comes to if people choose between like their nature and their state parks and their pickleball courts, most of them.
Yeah,
really lean towards
320
Florida.
room lodge at Anastasia State Park was part of that original
Mhm.
proposal, and that's a huge chunk.
I
of
remember
that
they kind
property.
of held a press conference about that, opposing this development in front of the Embassy Suites, which itself is about that size. And it was hard, Claire, to imagine something like that being shoehorned into the little state park.
Yeah, I mean, light pollution, doesn't that really increase your enjoyment of the great outdoors?
What about the turtles?
The turtles, that would actually affect their
Yeah.
nesting season,
Yeah.
certainly. I mean, this is something that was just incredibly unpopular.
I mean, this is
among
not
the public.
Yosemite where you have hundreds and hundreds of acres that you can put a lodge or two, and it becomes absorbed, I guess, in the mountains.
I mean, how much of Florida has been eaten up by development at this point anyway? Do we want to continue that trend, or we do want to preserve the last remaining spots of wildlife that we have?
I'm sure it's a bill that we're going to continue to watch. Claire Goforth, Renata DiGregorio, Dan Scanlon, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne.
And Maxwell, I just want to say a farewell. Next week is your last week at News for Jax, and we are going to greatly miss your reporting. You're an incredibly talented journalist,
Mhm.
and the city's lost, but best of luck to you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll be hanging around, so don't be a stranger.
All right. Coming up, a local theater promises to deliver some joy to 5 Point.
Congaree Pen, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpen.com. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. When people are hurt through no fault of their own, finding the who, what, when, where, why, and how that led to the accident is critical to proving the truth.
More at Terrell Hogan Law.
On the next Florida Roundup, the countdown for condos. Thousands of Florida condominium buildings where about 1.5 million people live have to have a structural inspection before the end of the year and start saving money soon for regular repairs. What kind of shape is your condo in? Have your monthly assessments gone up? Are you looking to buy or sell an older condo? Email us radio@thefloridaroundup.org. I'm Tom Hudson. Then join us Friday noon until 1.
A Manhattan murder mystery ends at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania. The state's governor blasts the suspect's supporters.
Hear me on this. He is no hero.
Also, a mega merger is blocked, progress on inflation stalls, and Donald Trump offers his son's fiancée a new job, one designed to foster a new relationship overseas. More on the Friday News Roundup next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, with just 12 days left until Christmas, a little joy might actually just mean completing that shopping list. I cannot believe it's 12 days. Lee Hamby is here to talk to me about an event. But Lee, first of all, how is it possible that it's just 12 days to Christmas?
I don't even understand. I'm not
What's
even
happening?
I'm not even haven't even begun to buy any gifts or do anything for Christmas.
You have been
except for-
planning an event. I'm guessing that's
Yeah.
cut into your time a little bit. So this is called Joy, the Ultimate Christmas Experience, and you are the artistic director for the Arts Collective Theater, which is hosting this.
Yes.
So first of all, what is this event? What is
Yeah.
it? And why? And why?
Well, we're brand new. The theater company is brand new. This is our first event, and we just wanted to do something for everybody that wanted to celebrate the holidays and have fun. So I used to be in charge of the events, the shows at the Jacksonville Zoo during Zoo Lights. So people really loved doing these shows and seeing these shows and experiencing that joy. So we called it Joy, and there's hot cocoa, there's pictures with Santa. We have a professional photographer coming in to do photos with Santa. We have carolers. We have an amazing group of carolers, and we do a live show as well called Jingle Bell Jukebox Show, which is a little 35-minute kind of theme park show with Christmas songs.
Some of our favorite Christmas songs.
Our favorite Christmas songs, some new Christmas songs, some old Christmas songs, some good standards. We also have some artisans that are setting up for last-minute gifts if you want to shop. Lots of fun stuff. So
Where is this physically located?
at the most adorable little chapel called Five Points Chapel and Gardens. It's an event space, but it has a beautiful little courtyard with the hanging lights and everything. It's just a gorgeous little venue.
And so is this kind of a handshake with the community? I mean, just an opportunity for the theater company to introduce itself?
It is exactly what that is. We wanted the people to come and learn about us as well as just finding that joy for the holiday. And we were just talking before we came on. It is kind of hard to find that joy anymore. As you get older, it's more about family. It's more about things like that because everything's so expensive. So we wanted to make it affordable and fun, and you get lots of stuff in one. It's not just a traditional theater show. It's an experience.
Yeah. So there's the stage element, but then there's the
Yeah.
shopping. That's kind of a cool thing to
Yeah.
roll in together.
Yeah.
And so tell us about the theater company itself. I mean, if this is your opportunity to introduce yourself,
Sure.
like what are you all about?
So we are a theater company that want to partner with artists of all kinds to do all kinds of productions, not just traditional theater, as you
Oh.
see, as you know, like Broadway shows. We do want to do shows like that. We want to do plays and musicals, but we also want to do interesting things that artists in our area create. And we have we are blessed with amazing artists of all types and every genre. So we get I talk to visual artists all the time that have great ideas and other theater artists. It's just amazing how much talent we have in this town.
And so you're going to be kind of mixing together performance also with like visual arts and then just other stuff, like kind of
Correct.
engaging.
Yeah. We even want to bring in, acts like cabaret acts and things like that. So we'll do probably around 4 big productions a year, and then everything else will be created by local artists or bringing in other artists from other places.
And so you used to do programming at the Zoo Lights, which they had to shut down this week because
Oh,
a
they did?
warthog was on the loose. Did you hear
Oh,
about
I
this?
did not hear about this.
Yeah, this was an actual thing that actually happened at the zoo.
A
They had to,
warthog.
they had to vacate
Wow.
the event because this warthog was roaming free, having his best day ever.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
So what's scheduling for the theater? I mean, like, what will be your next event after Christmas?
So we are kind of doing one-offs at this point
Okay.
because we do I won't give an address, but we do have a contract on a building
Oh, neat.
that we'll be renovating. So that's going to take a while. So until we really know how long it's going to be, we're just going to do kind of one-offs. So we are going to do a cabaret, which information will come out pretty soon about that.
I'm sure you'll come back and visit us for that.
Absolutely. And then we are planning a concert version of a very, very popular musical.
Oh,
I
give us a
cannot-
hint. Come on.
I cannot give you a hint yet.
Hmm.
'cause
Is it a current musical?
No.
Okay.
It is a musical from the past that everyone knows and loves.
Is it Wizard of Oz?
No.
Okay. Well, the event is called Joy, the Ultimate Christmas Experience. It's at the Five Points Chapel and Gardens. And when does this run?
We open Monday and run through Sunday. So Monday the 16th through Sunday the 22nd. It's from 6 to 9 p.m. in the evening. The Jingle Bell Jukebox Review Show shows twice a night at 7:15 and 8:15.
And where can people get info?
artscollectivetheater.com.
All right. Well, Lee Hamby, it is a pleasure to meet you in person. I've
you.
heard great things about you. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. That's our program. Thank you for listening. If you have any feedback or suggestions, you can send them to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. And if you missed anything, you can catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight. You can also find our entire archive on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to listen Saturday. Dr. Joe Servin, our favorite in-house neurologist and the host of What's Health Got to Do With It, is on every Saturday at 4. The executive producer of First Coast Connect is David Luckin. Our show is produced by Stacey Bennett and directed by Brady Corum. Jamie Valet is our associate producer, and our theme music is by Club Day Belugas. Join us Monday when we discuss a Florida prosecutor's plans to vacate 2,600 convictions from a sheriff's operation that